with our audio system. Welcome to day 2 of the retreat. I'm actually very pleased with how you're all going. You should be very tired. It's quite normal to be very tired on day 2 of the retreat. Make sure you note the tiredness. Make sure that you're aware of it. Don't sink into it and take it on board. Don't embrace the tiredness. Just acknowledge that it's there. There is tiredness. Very different from I am tired. I am tired is going to make you do this. If you know tiredness, it's just there. I want to thank you all for your chores. The bathrooms are looking wonderful. The meditation hall is spotless, clean inside and outside. So thank you very much for everybody who's doing that, cleaning the garden as well and in the dining hall. It's wonderful to be able to meditate in a silent and clean environment. Just a reminder about the silence. This retreat is a fully silent retreat. You should not be talking to anybody for any reason. If you have something that you need to talk about, you can talk about with Gary and Anton or myself. Just to let you know, we do have a one warning policy. That means we let you get away with a little whisper or a chat only once, and then it's a very uncomfortable thing to have to ask you to leave the retreat. I don't like doing it, Gary doesn't like doing it, so please don't ask us to say that to you. Maintain your silence, make sure you're not disturbing anybody, especially your friends. Your friends have come here. It may be the most important week of their life, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. This is a life-changing week. Please do not interfere with the arising of wisdom in somebody else. It's not a good thing to do at all. It's called Dhammataraya, an obstruction to Dhamma. You don't want to be an obstruction to Dhamma. It's a very unwholesome karma. So please avoid speaking to anybody. This morning we're going to continue looking at our sitting meditation. Up until now we've just been observing the main object of our practice, which is the rising and falling movement of the abdomen. Every time we breathe in, the abdomen rises. Every time we breathe out, the abdomen falls. The extent of the rising and falling varies from day to day, varies from morning to afternoon. Don't be concerned if sometimes the rising and falling becomes clear and sometimes it's not clear. Sometimes it can be long and flowing. Sometimes the rising falling is very, very short. It just feels like a little push, 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 like a little gate is opening or something like that. Very small. Sometimes it can be the rising can be quite long, and then the falling is almost nothing. Rising and ba, rising and ba, rising and ba. Don't interfere with the rising and falling. Try to be as mindful and as continuous with it as you can. Try to let it go. We should mention that we need to check our attitude, the attitude with which we're meditating. That means you don't want to be a person trying to watch your stomach going in and out. That's not what we're doing. If you're in that mode of being somebody trying to see something, please drop it. your attempt to try and see is craving. And that craving will block you from the present moment. So just be very natural with the practice. Allow your stomach to relax. Quite often, and I experience it myself, if you have a little bit extra here, you suck it in. In your daily life, you don't realize it. You hold your stomach a little bit tense. Maybe it looks better. Maybe you don't want to have that little roll of fat on your shorts or whatever. But we make our stomach tense. Try to relax. We're relaxing here. Relax the whole body. Relax any tension you may be creating around the abdomen area. And just allow it to rise and fall. It's also very important that we're not trying to conceptualize the rising and falling. We want to get at the pure sensations as they begin, exist, and then pass away. We're not trying to create an image of the rising and falling in our mind. We're not trying to imagine what the rising and falling looks like. We're not trying to picture it. Trying to picture, trying to visualize something is a different type of meditation. It's a conceptual meditation. We talked about conceptual meditation. Metta is a conceptual meditation we practiced last night. It proceeds from an idea. If you start to create an idea of what the rising and falling is, then you've gone into a different type of meditation. Samatha meditation. Samatha meditation does not display the three characteristics of impermanence, dukkha, and non-self. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Those types of meditation don't lead to dispassion, disenchantment, relinquishing and letting go. Quite often they lead to a stronger sense of identity. You become a meditator. I'm a meditator. I'm somebody who can meditate. I can get my mind still. And that's not the result that we're looking for. We're not here to try and increase our sense of identity, but actually to reduce it and ultimately remove it. When we're watching the rising and falling, the first thing we do is we activate our awareness in the present moment and we internalize that awareness. We bring ourselves into the body. You need to be able to feel the whole body as it's sitting there. Feel the whole body now, whole body now, whole body now, whole body now. Do that for a couple of minutes, at least 1 minute each session, just to bring yourself into the meditative space. And then, when the breath has become as natural as it needs to be, there will still be some feeling that you're controlling the breath, and that's okay. As long as you're not trying to manipulate the breath into some kind of pattern, as long as you're not trying to adjust the breath so that you can see it more clearly. Adjusting the breath to try and see it more clearly is craving. And this type of craving blocks you from the present moment. So don't do that. We want to see nature. We want to see raw data in real time. So what we need to do is present, internal, and then we start to direct our mind, direct our awareness and wisdom. The knowing aspect of our experience, we direct it and we place it down onto the rising and falling movement. It will spring up again. It'll spring back up to your eyes. You're used to exploring and examining the world through your eyes. It's your main point of gathering data and information. It's the way you make sense of your environment, by seeing it. So when I tell you to have a look at the rising and falling, your natural instinct, your natural urge is to try and, even though your eyes are closed, you're trying to look, trying to see it. And if you can't see it, then you try to imagine it. You start to imagine. So don't do that. When we say direct your mind there, that means bring the knowing awareness to that spot and try to bring it into the finest and smallest point you can, where the sensations are strongest. Try to bring it into that point. There may be a slight field of sensation that's here. Try to go for the lowest point where the movement is strongest and clearest. It doesn't matter if it's very short, if it's rising, falling, it doesn't matter if it's very small. It doesn't need to be a big... We're not watching these big long breaths. We're not watching the breath. I want you to try and drop that from your mind, that you are watching the breath. What you are watching is the arising of a physical sensation. And it begins when the abdomen starts moving, and it ends when the abdomen stops moving. There's a physical sensation there, actual sensation. That's what we want to be paying attention to. That's what we want to be monitoring and observing continuously. The sensation of the rising movement will begin and stop. Then there'll be a little gap. And the sensation of the falling movement will be there, and then there'll be a little gap. We don't want to try and imagine the breath in any way. We want to only tune in to the arising of this sensation and the passing away of this sensation. As we're able to do that, as we're able to do it more and more continuously, it will start to become a little bit clearer. You'll feel your awareness starting to get a little bit closer. In fact, some of you may have reached the destination and come in contact with that rising and falling movement, even if it was just for a couple of breaths. It's when you get up nice and close to it. It may feel like the rising and falling is happening up here in your face. Our aim is to send our awareness to the movement. Mindfulness is that which penetrates into the movement, penetrates into the physical sensation, and is able to observe it. You'll need concentration to do this. You'll need to be able to follow the rising and the falling quite continuously. When you can follow it quite continuously, you'll get closer and closer and closer and closer until you'll go into that rising and falling movement. You'll start to penetrate the rising and falling movement. Can everybody hear with that noise going on? Are you okay? Yeah? Okay. We should point out, you all should be doing your meditation on the rising and falling. If any of you are mixing another type of meditation technique or another type of yoga technique, I would ask you to stop doing that now. It's not beneficial for you to be mixing different types of meditation techniques. You don't need to be paying attention to your chakras. You don't need to be paying attention to any ideas or questions. You don't need to be paying attention to energy flowing through the body unless you're just noting it. Please do not mix any different types of meditation or yogic practices together with this training. It has one result only: confusion. You'll have a lot of doubt in your mind. Does this technique work? Maybe this technique's better. No, I think I want to do this one now. No, morning time I'll do this one, afternoon I'll do that one. You may as well go to the supermarket, take random products, put them in a bowl and eat them. Won't taste any good. It's not properly cooked. And as food, it's useless. So don't mix. Try to stay on focus. Try to stay with what you're doing here. The technique is very, very efficient, very, very effective. It leads to the desired result. It's efficacious. This is the main meditation technique which is practiced in Myanmar, which has 500,000 monks and nuns over there. It's also the main meditation technique that's taught to all the monks in the universities in Thailand here. There are hundreds of meditation centers in the country that teach this technique. It's a very well-known technique, and it's very well known to bring excellent results. So don't have any doubt about the technique. It doesn't need to be topped up with some other kind of training. It's shown millions of times that the techniques work. So have no doubt about that. Whether you can put these techniques into practice, that's another thing. Whether you're willing to let go of your ego, that's what it comes down to. Maybe your ego is telling you, do a little bit of this or do a little bit of that. Watch out for that. Be careful of that. It's coming to break your meditation practice here. So please be aware, our meditation practice here is all about watching nature. We're watching real things in real time. We're watching the physical sensations of the body, the feelings of the mind, the emotions of the mind, the thoughts of the mind. We're not trying to create an idea, a special idea that we can watch. In the process of doing the meditation, if weird things start to happen, just notice them. If the rising and falling starts to go sideways, just continue practicing with it going sideways. It's okay. You don't have to correct it. Oh no, it should be like this. Don't do that. That's like snakes and ladders. You go back to the start again. Every time you correct your meditation, you go back to the start. So just let it unfold naturally as it comes. If it starts to move up and down, it's also okay, as long as you're catching the beginning of the sensation and its end. We just want to observe the arising of something and its end. The arising of something and its end. The rising begins and finishes. The falling begins and finishes. In this way we can pay attention to things as they arise and pass away. And because it's a natural object, it will display the characteristics of impermanence, dukkha, and impersonality. You'll see that the body's sensations are out of control. They don't belong to you. The sensations arise and pass away independent of you. You can't make them arise and you can't stop them. You can't stop your ears from hearing. You can't stop your eyes from seeing. You can't stop your nose from smelling. Unless you do something really weird, like block your ears, block your eyes, suspend yourself. The body's always touching the floor. It's always touching something. Unless you can manage to fly through the sky in some way, your body will always be making contact. That's something that you can note. That's something that you can become aware of in the present moment. You can always become aware that it's touching something, or there's a touching sensation. This is how we observe the rising and falling movement. I don't want you to conceptualize. I want you to just penetrate into it. Sink your mind down into that movement. Don't worry about anything else. If there is a secondary object that comes to disturb you, like hearing or some sound, or somebody knocks over a water bottle, the sound of that water bottle takes less than 1 second. How long does that sound stay in your mind for? Do you pick it up? Do you start to recognize? Oh, water bottle. Whose was it? Who did that? Why did they do it? Did they pick? Don't go into the story of somebody's water bottle. It's not for you to examine or interpret what's going on. The sounds are not important. If it's the sound of a motorbike, sound of a grass cutter, a water bottle, or someone coughing, doesn't matter. I don't want you to note coughing or motorbike. I want you to note that hearing is occurring. Just that. We're getting back to the real basics. Before we start to interpret, before we start to subjectify our experience, before we take it as me and mine, before we decide, oh, the sound of a motorbike, oh, it sounds like my motorbike. Oh, I like motorbikes. Oh, when will I ride motorbikes? Blah, 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 blah. Gone. You got lost in the sound. You followed the story of that sound and away you went. Exited the present moment and you're into some kind of fantasy, some kind of story. If that happens, quickly stop it, recognize that you've got stuck in a story somewhere, and you come back to the rising and falling. Come back as quickly as you can. It's quite important that you recognize when you get lost in your thoughts. You need to be able to pull yourself out of the story, out of the narrative of what's going on. My suggestion to you is, as soon as you notice the mind going into a story, either about somebody or something, or normally just about yourself, quickly cut it off. Don't tolerate it for any length of time. There will be a little bit of delight, a little bit of enjoyment in those thoughts. That's because those thoughts are about me. They're subjectified thoughts. There's always some pleasure in trying to become somebody or be something. When it starts to think about itself, it gains some pleasure. It likes to think about itself. And it doesn't matter if it's thinking badly about itself or thinking good things about itself. It can be blaming and criticizing itself, but still getting some pleasure out of that. It gets pleasure out of being. It doesn't matter if it's in a state of depression or a state of excitement. As long as it has some selfhood, it's gaining some pleasure. So when those thoughts come, notice that there's a little bit of delight in wanting to think about it. Oh yeah, I have to go to Bangkok next week, so I have to have a little think about that now. What should I do? Shall I take the train or shall I go on the bus? Oh, maybe the flights from Samui are expensive. Maybe I'll go with some friends and we'll hire a car. Don't go into those thoughts. You start flowing away from things. There is some delight. Oh no, but I need to think about this now. It's really important. No, it's not. You're going to be here for another 8 days. You don't have to think about anything until the end of the retreat. You don't have to come and say, would it be okay if I had my phone so I can book a bus ticket? No, it's not okay. Don't ask. Let go of anything that's going to happen in the future. Be right here, right now, Drop those ideas. Recognize that there is some pleasure when you start to think about things. Notice it. That's why the thoughts continue. That's why you get lost in a story for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, because it enjoys thinking about itself. It loves itself. There's nobody better than me, is there? For itself. That's what it thinks. Everybody's the best person for themselves. Everybody loves to think about themselves, thinking about themselves and looking at themselves in the mirror, rejoicing and enjoying the look of its face. So watch out for that. Some thoughts are particularly sticky. In a few days you'll notice where your mind is. What do you keep coming back to? What do you keep thinking about? You keep thinking about that guy again and again and again. You keep thinking about wanting to buy that apartment in the funky inner city. You keep thinking about wanting to buy that van and drive around. Whatever it is that you're thinking about. Notice it. Make a note. Thinking, thinking, planning, planning, imagining, imagining. Whatever it is, you make a note of that stuff. Try not to get stuck in the story. The story is always a story of me. The narrative is always about me in some way. What I think, what I feel, what I imagine, what I want, what I don't want, the things I want to collect, the success I want to make of my life. Or you can just be stuck in that horrible question. What am I going to be? Everyone loves that question, don't they? What am I going to be? It's a nightmare. Everybody has to pass through that, sometimes for many years, sometimes for many decades. It starts when grandma asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Truck driver. Okay, good. I wish it was that easy. You'll notice those things coming up again and again. If you doubt, if you're in traveling, if you've finished your studies and haven't really entered your ideal career, you'll start thinking about, what am I going to be? What am I going to be? It's very debilitating. It's crushing. It's because of dissonance. Actually and in fact, you're nothing. But everybody's trying to make you be something. So the distance between this wanting to be something and the fact that you are actually nothing, there's a big gap, and that's dukkha. Until you realize you're nothing, this question won't drop. Until you realize that you don't have to satisfy other people's expectations. Everybody has expectations for you. They're just ideas of some random nama rupa. You don't have to follow that stuff. You don't have to think about it. So I want you to watch out for these types of thoughts when they're coming, and they will come. What do you want to be? My mother's still asking me, what are you going to be when you grow up? Mum, I'm already 50. What are you talking about? No, but you have to be something. Yeah, maybe when I'm 60 I'll work it out. It's a big question, and it's never answered, and it's always changing. So don't bring dukkha upon yourself thinking about what you have to be. What you have to be is present. The Buddha allowed us one attachment. He gave us only one thing that we can be attached to. What is it? The present moment. He says it's one fortunate attachment. If we can attach our awareness into the present, then we're free. Free from having to be somebody or become somebody. People try to create their identities through their family or through their education or through their job or through their possessions, constantly trying to create a sense of me, a sense of being. The Buddha said this is the cause of suffering. So if you're in that, and you probably, most of you are, unless you're lucky enough to have a family business, and they tell you when you're 12, you're going to work in the family company, and then after that you've got nothing to do. You don't have to make that choice. What are you going to be? You already know. Finished. So look out for those little bits of delight that start to happen when we're thinking. The thinking only sustains and maintains itself when you're identifying with it. If you're still in the picture, it keeps thinking. As soon as you step out of it, I want you to put it over there. There are 5 types. 5 types. There are many types, but we can split them into 5 groups. We've got thoughts about the past, memories. If your mind goes into the past, quickly cut it off. Even if it's a nice memory, oh, I like to think about her, oh, she was beautiful. Yeah, la 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 la. When you go into the past, just make a note, remembering, 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 and come back to your rising and falling. Come back to your present moment awareness, and then rising and falling. If you start to go into the future, and you start to make your plans about your fantastic life ahead of you, and it will be fantastic. Why shouldn't it be? Make a note. Planning, planning, planning for anything. Sometimes we just go into fantasy. Start to imagine what it's going to be like when I've got my big yacht and I'm sailing around the world, or buying an aeroplane or other such ridiculous things. Make a note. Planning, planning, come back to the present moment. Imagining, imagining, fantasizing, fantasizing. Sometimes we start to reflect. Maybe something in one of these talks makes you think about what he said. Reflecting. If you start to reflect, make a note. Reflecting, reflecting. Don't go into the reflection. Don't go into any of these plans or memories. Step back from them all. Your job as a meditator is to keep stepping back, keep stepping out of the experience. Some experiences are more sticky than others. They'll suck you in. They'll suck you in for 10 minutes. They may even, a story, you may get a mood, for example. You're feeling frustrated. It's day 2 of the retreat. I'm not enlightened yet. It's not working. This is no good. I should be on Zen Beach right now. Note any frustration that arises. Note any annoyance that arises. It's not you. It's quite normal on day 2 of an intensive retreat to be a little bit tired or very tired, frustrated, it's not working yet, I don't get it, my bed's wet, and any other kind of story that is occurring. So look out for that stuff when it starts to come. Most importantly, look out for comments. The thing's always making little comments. It makes comments about other people in the room. It makes comments about politics. It makes comments about the coronavirus. It makes comments about itself. It makes comments about its meditation. No, that's not right. No, you need to do it like this. No, back a little bit. No, he said to do it like that. Please notice if you started talking to yourself. Is that a normal thing to do? Do you normally talk to yourself? What do we do with people who talk to themselves? Off to the hospital you go. It's just a... If you keep it inside your head, people think it's normal. If you start to express it through your mouth, all the stuff that you're thinking, imagine what people would say. Oh my goodness, who is this guy? the things that he's saying. But we all know we have some very weird thoughts. They arise and pass away very rapidly. Don't be embarrassed about them. Of course, you don't have to share them, but just notice that they're going on. Notice what is arising. Notice any aversion that you may have. Notice any judgments. Notice any commenting. I've had people on the retreat say that they've given everybody in the hall a nickname. They've spent the retreat giving everybody a special name for what they think about them. That's not what you should be doing here. That's not the way. That's not meditation practice. I don't know what you're doing if you're doing that. Certainly you won't be having a very good time. You'll have a very strong desire to escape this place. Give me my passport, I'm leaving. No. You can pick it up in 10 days if you need it. Watch these thoughts of trying to escape. It happens to everybody. Become aware of it. Look at that. It'll come whispering. Maybe this wasn't the right time for me to do a retreat. Maybe I should do it next month because, at the moment I've got a little bit of a sore knee, and so it's really affecting my practice. Sure it is. Patience and acceptance is what you need. What you need is you need to become content in the present moment. Contentment is the best thing you can ever develop. Contentment and patience. This will give your life a very nice flavor. When you can become cool and contented with whatever is arising in your mind and not reacting to it. When you can tolerate your own nonsense. You'll need to have awareness and wisdom to be able to do that. You'll need to be able to step back, to step out of the story. That's what we're doing. That's what wisdom does. Mindfulness takes us to the story. That's called noting. We note what is present. Wisdom allows us to step back and see that for what it really is without becoming involved with it. What we're doing is we're becoming aware of an object, and then we know that we're aware of that object. We step out. We step back in the hierarchy of experience. We're noting what's there, and then we know that we've just become aware of it. There's a sound. There's awareness of the sound. That's noting. Knowing, or wisdom, is understanding that I've just become aware of that sound. Noting and knowing, awareness and wisdom. Sati sampajanya. It's one word in the Pali text, sati sampajanya. Mindfulness and clear comprehension, or mindfulness and full awareness. We're noting what's present. That's the content of your experience. Whatever's flowing through the mind, it's constantly arising and passing away. Whatever's flowing through, we're aware of it. That's content. What we want to know that content, we want to know that story as objects. We want to step back from that and just see the detail of what it is. If you're in the story, you won't be able to see it properly. You won't have perspective. If you live in the village at the bottom of the hill, then you'll just know the village at the bottom of the hill. But if you climb the hill and then have a look down, then you'll see your village from a different view. It won't be from street level, it'll be from satellite level. It's very different, isn't it? Normally we're at street level, participating in the content of our experience. We want to become Google Maps, come up and start to look down, observe from a distance, see it as it really is, not participating in the street level activity of our mind, but creating space around what's there. Sometimes The content of our mind can be disturbing. It may be a memory of an old trauma, or it may be some kind of depression that you're experiencing, or it may be some kind of anxiety, or you may be experiencing the results of addiction, where the mind is just craving after its special thing that it likes. It wants to get that thing. It keeps coming back 20 times a day. I've got to have a smoke. I've got to have a smoke. Where's my cup of coffee? The first thing I do when I leave this place is I'm going to drink coffee. And some people get into that. Some people manage to give up their addictions after the retreat. It's not the real purpose of it, but they can see their mind in a new way, see how obsessive it can become, and see how obsessiveness actually leads to a great deal of suffering. So all these things are secondary objects. The sights, sounds, smells, taste and touch, and the consciousness that arises with those things, hearing, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, they're all acts of consciousness. These are all secondary objects. Physical sensations in your body, aches and pains, your foot is numb, there's a little knot in your back somewhere, or your knee is aching, or your butt cheeks are sore, whatever it is, that's a secondary object. The way we deal with secondary objects is that we note them and know them and let them go. And then we come back to the main object. We don't want to get lost in the secondary objects. We want to be 95% of our time with the rising and falling movement. Rising and falling, rising, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising. Hearing, rising, falling. When hearing occurs, I want you to send your awareness to your ear. Hearing just occurred, and then come back. You don't need to spend any time investigating what the sound was and who made it and why. That's not important. You don't have to, if you see somebody new in the meditation center, you don't have to stare at them and think, who is that? What is that? What are they doing? Why are they here? It's not for you. You just need to make a note. Seeing is occurring. That's the raw data that's happening. We're not looking. There is seeing. We're not listening. Listening means you've gone out to the object and you've identified it, you've perceived it, you've labeled it, and there's a feeling attached to it, pleasant or unpleasant. You'll be in it. That's called getting lost. Getting lost in the objects. That's normally how we live our life. We use objects of the sense doors to give us pleasure, to give us some delight in this life. Imagine if you took away all the enjoyable things that you see and hear and smell and taste and touch. Life will be like a piece of cardboard. That's not what we're doing. We're not removing anything from our environment. The environment is perfect as it is. Everything is fine with the environment. We're just trying to not get entangled in it. We're not trying not to get caught up in it. Actually, what's happening is that all these secondary objects which are arising and passing away, they are the foundations for your sense of identity. When a secondary object arises and it's not noted and known, then it becomes the base of me, mine and I. Me, mine and I is created from not seeing those objects clearly. If you see them clearly, no me, mine and I can get in. Craving cannot penetrate. Wisdom is more powerful than craving. Wisdom has the ability to block the arising of defilement. But it doesn't happen automatically. Wisdom needs to be developed. And it's a path. It's a path of practice. Constantly stepping back and stepping out from our environment and noticing that the environment is fine accepting it's like this, becoming content with it, and settling down into the experience. If there's unpleasantness arising, make a note, unpleasant. If there's pleasantness arising, make a note, pleasant. I want you to become aware of all the twists and turns that the mind can make. But most of all, come back to the rising and falling. Don't spend time investigating the secondary objects. Here, we just want to be with the main object. And this morning we're going to add another part to our main object. Actually, we're going to join two parts together. We're doing 3-stage walking meditation, lifting, moving, placing. Now we're going to do 3-stage sitting meditation. That means we have 3 objects in our main mix: rising, falling, and sitting. Awareness of sitting means awareness of the whole body, taking in the field of sensation. We're not trying to picture the body. We're not trying to imagine what the body looks like. We're not trying to create an image or a picture of the body sitting there. We're using the body to sense any sensations in this entire field of experience. The whole body is full of sensations. Earth, water, fire and air, they're dancing. They should be 25% each. When earth, water, fire and air are 25% each, the body becomes very still and very balanced. In this kind of climate, that can happen. This morning was very beautiful. Bodies were very, very still. The elements are very quiet at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a wonderful time of day to meditate. As the day goes on, the elements become more and more disturbed. Sometimes the fire element can become stronger than the others and the body becomes hot. 20%, 20%, 20%, fire's up at 40%. The body becomes hot. Maybe earth element becomes stronger than the others and the body becomes hard. There's some aches. It feels very solid. Don't be concerned about these things. Just notice that there is a field of sensation that can be tuned into by activating your awareness of the whole body. If you can't activate your awareness of the whole body all at once, you can start with the top half and then the bottom half and slowly start to join them together. So the process of rising, falling, sitting. How do we do it? We become aware of the beginning of a sensation. That's rising. We're aware of that. It finishes. We become aware of the falling sensation. It begins and finishes. At the end of the falling sensation, I want you to quickly avert or quickly turn your attention to awareness of the whole body. Just a snapshot, just very quickly, in between the end of the out-breath and the beginning of the new in-breath. So it looks like this. I'll do it exaggerated. Rising, falling, sitting. Rising, falling, sitting. Rising, falling, sitting. So we have 3 things that we go from. We go from the rising sensation, which is small and locational. The falling sensation, which is small and locational. And then awareness of the whole body sensation, which is wide and spread out. It's a field of sensation. And you quickly just turn your attention to that field and then come back to your breath. Do not spend time trying to see the whole field of sensation in the body. If you spend time trying to do that, you will disturb the rising and falling movement. So we have to be quite quick in our turn to the body. rising, falling, sitting, rising, falling, sitting. As fast as a camera takes a shot, just like that, you expand your awareness to fill the whole body, and then back. So we're training the mind, we're training awareness. First we're directing our attention, directing our awareness to the location, maintaining through the rising, maintaining it through the falling, and then we spread our awareness out, and then we come back in again. So we're actually exercising our ability to be present and to move our awareness around inside the body. The sitting object lasts as long as you pay attention to it. The sitting is always there. It's like hearing. It's always there. We only note it when we note it. We don't need to be continuously aware of it. It's like a man with his foot cut off. His foot is cut off all the time, but he's not continuously aware that his foot is cut off. Only when he turns his attention to his foot, then he remembers, oh yeah, my foot is missing. So it's like that. 3 distinct objects which have a beginning and an end. The beginning of the object and the end of the object, and your ability to perceive this is very important. This is the beginning of starting to see how things arise and pass away. Content of our consciousness arises and passes away. Even consciousness itself arises and passes away. Consciousness and its object arises and passes away. And a new consciousness arises with an object and it passes away. This is constantly happening, continuously. Nama rupa, mind and body, and consciousness, vijnana. These two are always arising and assisting each other. In fact, they're mutually dependent upon each other. Mind and body process depends on consciousness to exist. Consciousness only arises when mind and body is there. So they're dependently conditioning each other. I don't want you to spend time looking for the sitting posture. Rising, falling, sitting. Where is it? You're searching around trying to make rising. You'll disturb the breath. Rising, falling, sitting. Where is it? Rising, falling, sitting. Where is it? You'll interrupt. So, rising, falling. Just turning your attention to the whole body is enough in the beginning. If you don't catch a particular sensation, it doesn't matter. Make a note, sitting. The body is sitting on the floor, just that. There's a sitting object. Rising, falling, sitting. Not more than half a second. Quickly turn your attention to it and come back and make sure your breath continues in its natural way. So these three objects, rising, falling, sitting, are now our main object of our meditation practice. You should do it continuously. Some of you will find it a little more work than just rising and falling. Rising and falling is kind of easy. It's kind of boring, and it's not very clear. It's just kind of rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling. Wonder what's for lunch. Rising, falling, rising. What's she doing? Rising, falling, rising. It's going to be much more different than that. Rising, falling, sitting. Rising, falling, sitting. Rising, falling, sitting. Rising, falling, sitting. It is extra work. It's like putting an extra weight at the gym. You've got 2 there. When you put the 3rd one in, of course it's a little bit difficult on the first morning when you do it. You jump from 20 kilos to 30 kilos. You're jumping from 2 objects to 3 objects. Of course, you have to work a little bit harder, but that's what we want. We want to be developing this faculty of energy, which is able to consistently and continuously note what is present. We want to tune that faculty. We want to tune that. That's what we're doing. We're developing this ability to be able to watch what is happening in the present moment without becoming involved in it, without taking it seriously or without taking it personally. Don't spend time trying to find the sitting posture. The sitting posture will become clearer once you're able to rotate around. Rising, falling, sitting, unclear. Rising, falling, sitting, unclear. Rising, falling, sitting, unclear. Rising, falling, sitting, unclear. Rising, falling. When you start to tuk 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 tuk, it starts to become clearer. When the mind becomes more focused and concentrated on what it's doing, the objects that it's looking at become clearer to it. There are less distractions, less little comments, or less thoughts, less sounds. And so it goes into a pattern. It's like one of those little torches with a handle, a little flashlight. When you turn the little handle and the light comes on. If you do it only slowly, boom, zoom, zoom, you may get a little bit of a flash, but not much. You must, and then the light starts shining out continuously. That's what you need to do. You need to be continuous in your practice. Rising, falling, sitting, rising, falling, sitting, rising, falling, sitting. Only noting secondary objects if they arise and when they arise. Don't go searching and hunting for secondary objects. Only if they really disturb your practice should you become involved with them. Only when your knee really starts to take your awareness away from the rising and falling. Then you can send your awareness to your knee, make a note of it, aching, 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 come back. Hardness, hardness, tingling, tingling, hearing, hearing, worrying, worrying. If you're worrying about something, make a note of that as well. You're concerned about what's going to happen next year or next week or whatever. Worry, worry, make a note, worrying, worrying. Doesn't matter, whatever you're worrying about, whatever decisions you make on this retreat, none of them will come true. Completely useless activity. Imagining what the future is going to bring. Be careful of that. Be careful of becoming lost in fantasies. We're not saying that you shouldn't have some kind of goal to your life. You can develop your goals. But during the retreat, it's not your time to be thinking about those things. You shouldn't be journaling. You shouldn't be writing your book. I've had somebody come out of a 7-day retreat and say, "Oh, it was a great retreat. I wrote a whole book." Excuse me? Yeah, just got this whole novel in my head. Some people come up with business plans. That's not why you're here. You're not here to come here and I'm just going to have a quiet think for a few days. You can do that in your hammock, please. Much more comfortable by the beach. Thinking will never lead to wisdom. Thinking is an object of wisdom. Thinking is an object which is to be noted and known. Thinking is very useful in the world. It's managed to produce many technological changes, and we've improved the quality of people's lives through thought, science and engineering and all the wonderful things we've discovered, medicine. Thoughts are useful in their own domain, but thoughts won't take you to understanding reality. You can't think your way to reality. You need to experience reality for yourself in the here and now. there's no other tool with which you can use except your own mind. And that mind must be present, it must be internalized, and it must be continuously noting, knowing and letting go. The matrix, as you've seen, doesn't often have a glitch in it. It seems like the story of our lives, the narrative, the movie of our lives just keeps flowing. We never actually manage to pierce behind the story. The matrix is quite effective. Keeps us fully trapped in being a person and participating in the person world. If you want to hack this reality, if you want to have a look behind the curtain, then you're going to have to note and know continuously until you start to break the continuity of your experience. Until you break the continuity of the arising of self. The sense of self, the me and the mine, is arising every moment. The job of our meditation is to disrupt this process, disrupt the default process of creating a sense of self in the world. The Buddha's teaching is about seeing this process happening in real time and then letting it go. How do we let it go? We let it go by seeing that it's impermanent, it's unsatisfactory, and it's not self. These three general characteristics which apply to all conditioned phenomena. When we see a conditioned phenomena, whether it's a thought or a sensation or an old trauma or an emotional mood you're in now, when we see the reality of those things, then we can become disenchanted towards them. We no longer take them seriously. We no longer take them personally. We've seen what they are. It's a conditioned mental state that's arising and passing away. It wasn't here a day ago, and it won't be here tomorrow. But it's here now. Why should I identify with it and take it as me? I know if I pick this up, if I pick this mood up, if I pick this emotion up, it's going to cause me suffering if I identify with this state. Whether it's anger, or whether it's sadness, or whether it's anything else. Pick any emotional state. If you identify with it, it's yours. You become that state. Whatever a monk frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind. Whatever you frequently think about, that's what you become. So be careful what you think about. We want to observe thinking. We want to watch thinking. We want to step back and separate from the thinking process. Observing and thinking are different things. Observing, mindfulness, has the power to overcome thoughts, to overcome emotional states, to overcome moods. Awareness and wisdom has the ability to disconnect from those things. Our meditation is not to make things go away, however. We're not trying to get rid of anything. That's a type of aversion that arises, trying to push things away. No. Our meditation practice is only about understanding. It's only about seeing things clearly. That's our job. When we see things clearly, the rest follows on. The dominoes start to fall. When you really see something, you won't identify with it. When you're not identified with it, you won't be interested in it. When you're not interested in it, when that object can no longer sustain a sense of me, mine or I, then that object is dropped. It's let go of. It's passed away. It passes away. That object has been neutralized. It can no longer do what it normally does. It can no longer act as a foundation of self. Instead, that object has been turned into a foundation of mindfulness. a satipatthana. That's what we're doing. That's why we're watching these objects. We're trying to turn them into foundations of awareness and wisdom instead of a foundation for me and mine. And we do this over and over again. As you do it more and more quickly, you'll become better at it. So we're doing 3 objects. Rising, falling, sitting. Rising, falling, sitting. If we have 12 breaths per minute, 12 in-breaths, 12 out-breaths, and 12 sittings, that's 36 things that we're noting and knowing in 1 minute. That's starting to become present. We'll need to be noting around 60 things per minute. That means we need, on each in-breath, if we can note 5 things, we get 60 notings per minute. That's almost fast enough to make our noting continuous. When our noting becomes continuous, the matrix starts to shake. You no longer see your conceptual reality. The car is no longer there. You'll start to see car parts only. Or you'll break through even further than that, and you'll just see earth, water, fire and air. Or you'll see consciousness in its true nature. Or you'll see thought in its true nature without being involved with it. I think that's enough for this morning. I've gone a little bit over time. Please continue with your walking meditation and sitting meditation. We want to get that noting up faster and faster. We'll give you more objects as the week goes on to get you to that 60 per minute, and then you'll have experience of the matrix glitch and you'll see things as they really are.